Thank you for joining us here at the first talk of our second annual Boulder Talks, Insights from Education Innovators series. This series came about from a desire to bring to campus visiting experts who are innovating quality online education, and our guest today is certainly one of those people. Through this community, we're hoping to explore current themes like learning excellence, innovating credentials, scaling degrees, expanding access and opportunity, and ensuring success across various modalities. And as is common with so much of what we do in online education, this speaker series is certainly a community effort. So I want to recognize our co-sponsor for the speaker series, our co-sponsors, the Center for Teaching and Learning, the Office of Information Technology, Continuing Education, the Office of the Registrar, University Libraries, and the Office of Academic and Learning Innovation. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker today. Actually, Yakut and I were just reminiscing about the fact that the first time I ever talked to her was on a phone, talking about co-building a course between Georgia Tech and CU Boulder. And since then, I've gotten to see her speak at multiple conferences and had really terrific conversations. So I'm really excited to welcome her to campus. Dr. Yakut Gazi is the Vice Provost for Learning Innovation and Digital Education at Duke University. In this role, she oversees the Office of Learning Innovation and Lifetime Education, with responsibility for the development and execution of pedagogical innovation and digital education strategies, youth academic enrichment programs, and continuing education and lifelong learning opportunities. Before this position, she was Associate Dean for Learning Systems at Georgia Tech Professional Education. Her higher education experience spans over 30 years in 4 countries. That's still right? Or do you add an extra one? I think it's 4 at last count. Yeah, that's great.
No, 4 countries.
She served on the Academic Advisory Council for Quality Matters as an elected council member and first vice president of the International Association for Engineering Continuing Education and a board member of the University Professional and Continuing Education Association. Dr. Gazi has her PhD in Educational Psychology from Texas A&M, an MA in Educational Sciences, and a BS in Teaching Chemistry, both from her university in Turkey, and I can't pronounce that name.
I was waiting for you. It's positive.
Excellent. So with that, I'd like to welcome and invite Dr. Yakut Gazi to the stage.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be back here. I'm honored to be in front of you because Colorado Boulder is one of the institutions that I have great respect for. This is where we look at for innovation. And so I'm a little nervous because what is it that I can tell you that you don't already know? What can I bring to this conversation? Because we have amazing leaders like Randall here. But I thought maybe I can frame a few conversations and throw something at you, and then we can have a conversation. Does that sound like a good plan? Okay, Randall mentioned that I'm in a vice provost position at Duke. It's a new role. I've been there almost 2 years and a half, and I'm building a new organization. And we are trying to put Duke on the map for learning innovation and lifetime education. There's a lot of innovation taking place. It's been that way for a long time. But what didn't happen at Duke is all that innovation didn't really move the needle in terms of how we incorporate pedagogy and technology into the learning environments and learning environments in a broader sense, not just undergraduate and graduate education, but pre-college to post-career, so with a lifetime emphasis. So is there anything else that I want to tell you about what we do? Maybe throughout the conversation it's going to come up. We were counting earlier, 7 institutions. I've been at 7 institutions globally, and every institution taught me something different, but then there are a lot of things that are very common too. We all have a certain pride about our institution. We all think that the way we do it is the Boulder way, or Duke way, or Georgia Tech way, but in a lot of cases it should be in the service of students, right? So I will invite you to imagine a fitness facility that expects a transcript from your former fitness engagements. It asks for letters of recommendations from your previous personal trainers. It asks for a fitness essay describing your fitness journey. It also asks for documentation of any previous competitive sports participation or standardized fitness test scores. Let's call this Elite Training Academy. And they have a state-of-the-art training facility. They expect everything to take place in that training facility. They don't acknowledge that fitness can take place outside, outdoors, or online at home. And it needs to happen in that specifically designated space. And you really have access to all of that for 4 to 6 years, on average. And then once you're out, the only thing you can do is to look in from designated spaces. And they also go on to say that it's not about the actual exercise, it is the prestige of having been selected to exercise there. I love the chuckles. So I know that we're thinking along the same lines here. And then, they also say, while the gyms may offer comparable equipment or similar training, they cannot match our traditions, or the training that we deliver, or the fitness that we deliver through our personal trainers who are experts in studying the human body, but not necessarily in personal training. Right? So there's a difference. Obviously, we don't live in that world. Fitness, at least in this country, is accessible, to an extent affordable. I'm not going to act like $10 a month is something everybody can pay. But you don't have to subscribe to a gym. You can actually exercise and be fit with anytime, anywhere, under any conditions, right? And we still have tragic outcomes when it comes to health. There's all that, and fitness is not the only picture here. Of course, there's dietary habits and whatnot. But we have everything that's available to us to be fit. There are very few barriers, and then we still, as a nation, have a problem in terms of how fit we are. We have a similar problem in higher ed. We have some tragic outcomes and tragic pictures that we're looking at. 40 million people with some college education and no degree. A quarter of adults under 40 have student loan debt, ranging from $15,000 to $35,000 on average, depending on the credential. It goes higher when you're talking about graduate education. And we are now living through a time where confidence in what we do is an all-time low. Right? So, if this is not a compelling picture to change what we do in higher ed, let me give you a few more drivers why we need to change. And I see this as not only an opportunity, but also a responsibility and obligation that institutions like yours, institutions like mine, need to do. It's a part of our global social responsibility, and I'm going to come back to that. Churn of knowledge. I don't have to tell you, the rate with which knowledge changes is tremendous. The graduates that we send out to the world, in about 6 months to a year, depending on their field, they will be in need of new knowledge. And we don't necessarily have structures or habits in higher education to be able to help our own alums. So this rapid change in knowledge and the need to upskill and reskill results in a skill gap. And again, these are not the things that we worry about in higher ed. Our currencies are undergraduate degree, graduate degree, sometimes the associate's degree. We don't even, at my institution, you say skills and people go, oh, we prepare people for life in general, not necessarily certain skills or certain professions. So we don't really operate in this domain, but there's a churn of knowledge which results in a skills gap that, if we're responsible, we should at least think about what our alums need. Demographic shifts, the student body that we're used to receiving is changing, and the numbers are dropping. So there's a huge demographic shift there where Africa is going to be the only place where we will see increasing youth. Come 2050, Africa is going to be the only place where we will see population growth. Up until then, China, India, of course, will continue to see growth, but then it peaked. The population growth in this country peaked, apparently. So there's definitely, and then COVID happened, and that caused about an 8% drop in population growth. So that's going to impact us in class of 2037. So there's like a lot of demographic needs, reasons why we need to change the way we think about what we do in higher ed. And then we will live longer lives. I love this slide. There's a baby hand, and we cannot love. There's a slide with a baby hand. We will live longer lives. There's a study that was conducted in 2019, I believe, from London School of Economics that said that in the developed world, 50% of kids born today will get to live 100 years old. Will get to be 100 years old. Yeah. And they also say the first person that will live 150-year-old is already born. I said this in a meeting, and somebody raised it, it's me. So I met that person. So what does it mean to live long? That means you will have a longer career, during which the knowledge that you will depend on will change. You will need to upskill and reskill for a longer period of time. You will have longer marriages. So as opposed to living 40 years with a person, you may have to live with a person for 60 years. What does love look like if you live that long and share a life with I will make sure that my husband does not listen to this. But then there are changes societally. There are new pressures on your systems for social security, education, transportation, healthcare, all of that. But then based on this, we also start talking about a 60-year curriculum instead of a 20-year curriculum. Because you will need to continue to learn to be able to be vibrant in the society and hold a job that will feed you for way longer than what we traditionally do. And then society also expects us, higher education systems and education in general, to be an agent for societal change. We know diverse education environments, diverse work environments are superior to homogeneous ones. And this is not just a moral thing, this is also, it makes business sense to have diverse environments. So that's another responsibility that we have, that we hold very dear. But then as demographics change, and politics change, what kind of responsibilities we still need to hold. So that's another driver. So it is time for us to think about life's learning journey, not as a single stream, a river, but a braided river, where you can start in multiple places, you can stop in multiple places, you can go sideways, upstream, downstream. Somebody told me the other day, I would like to see this analogy going upstream because education should actually be difficult. So in 2 dimensions, it's up to your imagination. If you want to say slope, put a slope there. But you can go upstream, downstream. Earlier today, we were talking about how your performance-based admission system allows folks to not follow a linear path, right? If you're able to achieve this, you're basically, you finished high school, you never did an undergraduate, so maybe you took a sideway here, but then you came back upstream, and you allowed that. So it's just a different paradigm to think about the educational journey. The good news is there's a lot of innovation that is already happening in higher education, and you are sitting at one of those institutions that many of us look at to see the creativity that's happening here. What we are doing at Duke, my previous institution, Georgia Tech, rolled out 3 at-scale master's degrees, all with a price of less than $10,000. When I started Georgia Tech in 2016, there were less than 1,000 online distance students. As I was leaving 2.5 years ago, it was approaching 19,000. So that happened in a matter of 7, 8 years. So when you think about education differently, and then you think about the parameters that we operate with, which is, things need to happen in person. If they're of quality, they need to happen in person. If they're of quality, they need to be selective. So the more selective we are, the the more selective we are, the more quality that we bring, which is completely crooked to me because selectivity is a function of capacity, not necessarily a function of quality. So we conflate those things in higher education. So Georgia Tech's model, I think, is very inspiring in different ways, different business models, different delivery models, but at the same time upholding that, this is where you come to learn the best from the best faculty. Georgia Tech is still a very selective, highly selective top 10 public university. It's the largest in the state of Georgia, and it's also the most selective. So these kinds of things inspire us to do things differently at Duke as well. I actually started this job. I accepted this job because the challenge was great to me. All these things that I observe at public institutions, can I achieve some of them at a private elite institution? And what would that mean for our community and world in general? So to sum everything that we hold dear, we see learning as a lifetime engagement, not just what happens in Duke, at Duke campus. We also want to put a lot of emphasis on data-informed practice as a research institution. I think there are a lot of things that we do in teaching and learning spaces that are, at best practices, but not necessarily tied to research. And then we use digital education to not only amplify and accelerate, but also remediate. Institutions like mine are in the business of talent identification, not necessarily talent development, but we want to bring that to our pre-college programs especially, because creating college pathways for underrepresented students is a very important thing to us to bring more diversity to our undergraduate education and undergraduate education in general. So some of the things that we started putting forward and talking to our constituents more and more about and changed our processes around demand-based credentials and programs. So rather than having a supply-based mindset where I have this faculty member who wants to teach this, and let's put it out there and let's see if people sign up for it, especially in the non-credit space. That's the modus operandum, right? Somebody wants to do this, well, why not? Let's do it. But especially when we have huge needs for upfront investment like online, it is very important for us to see the market and if there's a need for that in the market and what is that nuance and what is it that you can bring, something that Boulder is already doing, for example. I mean, is there merit in us doing that? And if the answer is yes, what is that nuance that we can bring? Importance of soft skills as a liberal arts institution. Soft skills is a part of almost every conversation. And if you're not talking about soft skills, people get upset. It's not just STEM, they say. Which is very true, because employers also emphasize critical thinking, creativity, teamwork. Just being able to work with others is very important to employers, just as much as they typically say, I can train people to do X, Y, and Z, but I want people to be able to show up to work, be positive, work with each other, critically think, create. So in our program and portfolio, we think deeply about soft skills. So we're working on rolling out a technology-related micro-credential. We're working with the individuals, putting that together to make sure that there are those aspects of creativity and critical thinking throughout the curriculum. Another aspect of, we're building this, we're talking about it, there's nothing concrete yet, but taking the coaching or advising to the next level of career coaching, and career coaching for a lifetime. A lot of what happens at our institutions in terms of career preparation is preparing students for their first jobs, but not necessarily helping adults or your own alums to think differently about their career. What does it mean that AI is taking over? What do I do? Which credentials should I pursue? Which fields are best matches for me? So one thing that we had heard, for example, is, if accounting is automated or AI takes over, accounting jobs or people in accounting jobs have similar skills to cybersecurity professionals. So, making these connections like this and then helping learners create those pathways is something that is not there, and we need to start building those. And then technological and business innovation. This is one of the headquarters for this. You brought a new business model, a new delivery model, a new technology into the master space. And Georgia Tech did that, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign did that, many others, about 70 institutions that brought a huge level of technological and business innovation to the space. So that's what we're trying to promote at my institution too. But I've only been there for a little over 2 years. So hopefully in the next 12 to 18 months we will have more outcomes here. And one thing that we recently did, again as a research institution, it's very important for us to look at what we do pedagogically, technologically, delivery-wise, is be informed by our interventions that we create. So first we brought our faculty development arm closer to our research arm and called it applied research. So structurally we brought our teaching and learning activities, center activities, which we don't have a center for teaching and learning, those functions are within my team. So we brought the team that works with faculty closer together with the research team that helps faculty do research. The idea is whatever intervention we create, we need to learn from it, we need to turn around and talk more about it, so it's this little engine that works. And we also launched the research center in October, that basically looks at transformative education, identifies those pivotal moments in our educational journeys, and then how to scale those. Because, when we look at our educational journey, do you remember this calculus class that inspired you and you learned calculus so well? Oh my goodness. It's usually maybe a human connection that you had at one point in your life, or an immersive experience, a hands-on experience, a study abroad. What are those things? One, and how do we scale them? It's two. And how can we do this as a community, not just, university coming here and doing research and throwing that research out there, but co-creating the questions and the answers. No talk is complete without talking about AI. So generative AI obviously is one of the issues that we're dealing with right now from faculty development perspective, from the way we do our own work perspective, and then from a research perspective. I am very interested, obviously, there are a lot of things with generative AI that are very promising, especially in teaching and learning environments. But there are also some concerns too. By the way, I asked, I think this was Claude, and I said, create a visual diagram of what Gen I is. So it's a self-portrait. This is AI-generated self-portrait, and then this is human-generated self-portrait. I just like this juxtaposition that, there's a lot of progress that still needs to be made for us to have the level of engagement and inspiration that we have in artwork like that versus this. So, again, productivity and scientific advancements are very exciting, and 80% of the talk out there is about how, especially from the corporations, from the industry, it's about how well we're going to do so many things and we're going to be so productive. And in learning environments, I'm especially motivated by the thought that we are finally going to be able to create truly personalized learning environments that mimic the effects of one-on-one tutoring. It's a 45-year-old theory and then research that happened in the last 40 to 45 years to find learning environments where, when combined with mastery learning, the effect is similar to a one-on-one tutoring, which is an increase in average achievement of the group by 2 sigma. So somebody who would normally get a C in a traditional learning environment would get an A. So this kind of personalization only happens in tutoring environments because you have one-on-one impact and ability to change the pace, the content, and the strategy, but it's very hard to scale the one-on-one tutoring, right? So that's the problem that this line of research has been trying to solve for the last almost half century. We are probably very close to it by the integration of AI agents into learning environments. So that really excites me. And there are already a lot of platforms, Coursera does some of that, right? Incorporation of an agent that can help students navigate the course content, ask meaningful questions, do Socratic method even. Very exciting. But then there's also the impact on what it means to be human in the age of AI. This is something we invented, and every time we use it, it gets smarter. There is no other technology that we invented that operates that way. Calculator is not that, computer is not that. Printing machine, because people say this is a Gutenberg moment, right? This is a moment that didn't happen before. Again, every time you interact with this thing, it gets smarter. What does it mean for our human agency? What does it mean to live in a world where productivity is going to be depending on the thing that you invented and it can supersede you? So a lot of questions there. And you hear this all the time, the impact on the workforce. Brookings Institution released this report about a month ago now. What's really interesting to me is this here. The 19 million Americans. That's the initial impact. Initial impact of AI on 19 million jobs in this country in certain fields that are typically stable jobs. Administrative assistants, so secretarial jobs, finance, paralegals, entry-level communications jobs, because now everybody thinks they can create any image that they want, right? So what does it mean for entry-level folks who did not prove themselves with their added talents? Again, the added layer to me is the differential impact of this. Those jobs are heavily occupied by women, yes. So this set of 19 million jobs are heavily occupied by women. And these jobs enable those families to have a hope in life and perhaps send their kids to school, get education, upward mobility, social mobility, and stable jobs. And now they're being threatened by AI. So that's a huge concern. Trustworthiness. Obviously, whatever biases we have in our societies, they're reflected in our data. And guess what? That data supports a lot of these LLMs, language learning models. And the outcome that we receive is an outcome of all those biases. So how do we deal with that? How do we educate our students to look at an output of an AI and ask meaningful, critical questions about the utility of that product and sustainability? So every time an image is generated by AI, it's equivalent to charging your phone once. And every time you prompt, it can be a text prompt and text outcome, apparently it's equal to this much water. So that's concerning. And all those good things that we talked about in terms of AI's positive impact on society, there's not enough energy on the face of the planet to power all that. And then when there is scarcity like that, there's always inequity, and some people are left behind. And we see this already, right? If you want to access the better AI tool, you have to pay $20 a month. And that's the difference between the free one that sort of gets you there, but doesn't really get you full where you want to go. So our responsibility becomes bridging that divide of those who have it and those who don't have it. We have layers and layers of this, right? Already in our society now we have those who have AI agents and those who don't have AI agents. The last mile, familiar with the concept? It's a supply chain concept. The hardest thing to get products to is that last mile. And we already had this issue in technology in higher education. And naively, most of my career, when I heard the last mile, I always thought about this rural village in the middle of nowhere. Of course, it's hard to get there, right? And then COVID happened. And what happened? People across from the street from you, people across the highway from you, didn't have access to the internet, and all of a sudden they don't have access to education, they can't do their groceries, so the last mile became real for all of us. And now we're talking about another layer of that last mile when it comes to AI. So it's just an added level of responsibility to us as higher education leaders to think intently about the resources and who those resources are provisioned for. So this is where it gets, this is where my biases are going to really come into play. I think I tried to lay out to you why we need a lifelong approach to education, because things are changing rapidly. People will need access to education. They will not look like our students that we have on our campuses. We're talking about larger numbers. They're going to need to access our educational systems over and over again. And this is a scale problem. This is larger numbers, larger number of interactions. So it's not, it cannot be solved by our boutique approaches that we have. So this is where institutions like yours, institutions like mine, not only have a responsibility, not only have an opportunity and capacity, but also a responsibility and obligation to think about ways where it's not about what's happening in our special physical spaces, but it's also about how we can increase access to those spaces, how we can amplify our impact on the rest of the society. And that kind of scale thinking is essential to what we do in higher education. This is the same concept. We have these unique environments that we built, and we take great pride in. And then earlier today we talked about gatekeeping. We have so many things where we do gatekeeping, and there are some places where it makes full sense to do that kind of gatekeeping, but then they somehow proliferate. Let me give you an example. My pre-college programs, in a place like Duke, pre-college programs create a lot of impact. There are about 1,400 students who come to the Duke's campus in the summer, and then it generates a lot of revenue. The pre-college programs have an application process for middle and high school students. Let's face it, who fills out that application? Parents, which means there's a certain type of parent that fills out that application, applies to our programs, then get in. So that's one side. The other side is apparently we accept 85% of the students, and what they don't accept is they didn't submit their transcript, or they didn't have a first math course so that they can take the second math course. So we do these things because we want to give that selectivity signal that is given from everywhere else at Duke, right? Because it's hard to get in here. It's just because of quality. No, it's because of the selectivity signal. So where was I going with this? I start a sentence and I forget the rest of the sentence. So these gatekeeping, thank you, the gatekeeping practices that we have, we just out of habit created them, and we never really took a step back and does it still make sense? Does it still make sense for me when I want to create college pathways for students who would normally go to any college, not just mine, any college? Does it make sense for me to have a tough application? And I know it's not the students that are filling it. So, looking at our practices from the perspective of how can I scale this? How can I give more access? Is so important for us as educators these days. Oh, so I'm not done yet, because there's one more thing that I want to talk about here, and that is universities are where democracy's promises are fulfilled. Democracy's promises are realized. And one could argue that the future of our democracies depend on what happens on our campuses, but the future of our democracies is also depending on our ability to help the rest of the society benefit from what happens on our campuses. And one way to do it is to think about not just within the parameters of our campuses and what physical spaces and our habits and our existing approaches to credentials, but also about how do we engage the rest of the society in a way that makes sense to them, in a way that makes sense to us. And the only way this can happen is to think about scale. Not about 10 or 15 or 20 people in a program, which is very, very common in higher education, but 100, 200, 20,000 students in a modality. So these are the things that I wanted to just share with you to start a conversation with. Thank you for being here and giving me this time. I appreciate it a lot.